G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. I am Pierre and this is Simple Home Brew. I'm here today because I'm in the shed doing some distilling and I've just finished. Actually, I've done the first run. We're going to do the second run another day. It's just time consuming and you know, I've got other things I need to do like this video. So today I'm here to introduce you to Next Level Media. John Chapo, he's actually got a big write-up on his YouTube channel. Says he's a physician over at a hospital somewhere where he lives, and he's an enthusiastic do-it-yourselfer, and this is his brew shed. This video is fairly long, so I've cut it a bit. I've actually done some editing to make it work a bit better, hopefully. If you want to see the full video, I'll leave a link anyway, so you guys can see it here, and we'll go from there. If you like what you see, check him out on YouTube. I have the link down below and a link at the end of this video, so if you guys want to have a look at his channel, see what he's got and see what he can offer, by all means, please support our community. We are trying to get it out there, how to brew, how we brew, and how many different things you can do to make your brew work. So guys, I hope you like the video.
Hello and welcome to my channel. Thank you for subscribing. I'm John Chapo and today I'll be taking you on a full tour of my home brewery. I'll start with a little bit of background. I began brewing back in 2017 after my wife bought me a stovetop kit, and I've loved it ever since. Read a lot of books, and I came across one resource in particular. It's a website called The Electric Brewery. So I'd like to give a shout out to Cal. He's the owner of the site. He actually sources and manufactures a lot of the components that I use, including the brewery controller, which we'll take a look at here shortly. As far as planning for the infrastructure of my brewery goes, it was a long and tedious process to say the least. Obviously a lot easier if you're designing a custom space. I literally researched and really decided on all of the equipment that I was going to need prior to coming up with the dimensions of the space. I also wanted to have a completely concealed and enclosed room here in the basement, mostly to keep the brewery smells out from the rest of the household. We've got a vent hood with a fan. Underneath me there is a floor drain, which has definitely come in handy once or twice. I planned ahead on where the plumbing would go for the sink here. Cleaning is more than half the battle in brewing. As far as my brewery setup here goes, I use a typical 3 kettle system. You've got the hot liquor kettle for heating up the water. You've got your mash kettle for soaking your grain, and then you've got the boil kettle here where you add your hops. Let's start with the brewery controller here. This is from the Electric Brewery. The thing I really like about this controller is there's no proprietary parts. Everything is off the shelf. So in the eventual case that you need to replace or repair something, you can do it yourself. Let's turn it on here. You can control the heating elements in both the boil kettle and the hot liquor tank individually, one at a time. You also have individual temperature sensors in each one of the kettles. You've got your current temperature, and then you've got your set temperature. You also have alarms that you can set when you reach the desired temperature, and a separate alarm to time any of your brewing processes, such as your boil time or your mash time. You also have the ability to do step mashes here and easily ramp up your temperature in the mash kettle. You also have individual control of each of the 2 pumps, the water pump and the wort pump. So I've been using this thing for 2 years, never had an issue. I highly recommend it. It really makes the brew day a lot easier. While we're here, let's talk about the exhaust fan. I designed this stainless steel custom vent hood to fit this space. There is a high-powered vortex fan which exhausts directly to the outside. There's also a return air vent in the ceiling to bring in fresh air when that's running. We've got a variable speed control switch right here. I'll turn that on real quick. So that can get going pretty high. It helps to vent out the heat and any fumes during the brewing process. Specifically for boiling, I run it on high. It's also great for the occasional cigar in here. It'll literally suck the air out of here in 30 seconds or less. Okay, let's take a closer look at the kettles here. So I decided to use Blickman G2 kettles. These are all 20-gallon kettles. They come standard equipped with the sight glass and the thermometer you see here. They also come with a proprietary valve in place of this. I decided to get rid of that in lieu of a ball valve. It's much easier to use with this type of setup. I also used all tri-clamp fittings wherever possible, just for ease of disassembly and for cleaning. All of the other valves and ports that you see in the other kettles I installed myself. I drilled holes through the metal and I used a Greenlee hole punch to get the exact sizes needed for the fittings. And also I used all weldless fittings. If you cut your hole right and deburr it and use the proper fittings, they work great. I've never had a single leak in 2 years from any of the fittings that I've installed myself. So you can see some of the ports that I have here. There's a ball valve with tri-clamp fittings. You've got a T valve in order to connect the temperature sensor there. And then you've got quick disconnects there for attaching the silicone tubing for moving your fluid back and forth between kettles using these two pumps down here. You've got another valve up here for recirculating your hot water within the hot liquor kettle to keep a constant temperature there. These two ports here connect to a heat exchange coil to recirculate the mash through the hot liquor kettle to maintain a constant temperature in the mash kettle. You don't want to have a heating element inside of the mash kettle because it will scorch the grain. Again, you can see the heat exchange coil there, and then you can see the heating element down there, the electric heating element. Mash tun here, you have another recirculating port here, really to transfer water into the mash kettle. You use that port. Another great feature about the Blickman kettles is this false bottom with the stepped lip. That allows your water to drain beneath the grain and then recirculate out. And then you can see the silicone tubing to transfer water. And then we've got the boil kettle here. Take a look inside. There's a heating element in here as well. And then you've also got what's called the hop stopper. And that was also created by the electric brewery to keep the hops from, getting out of the kettle and into your fermenter, at least as much as possible. And it works really, really well. Underneath the kettles here, you have the two pumps. As you can see, they're both chugger pumps, and I retrofitted those with tri-clamp fittings and ball valves as well, just to make it an easier process, easier to take apart and clean with the quick disconnects there. And right here you have a copper counterflow chiller, and this is probably the best, most efficient way I could find to rapidly chill the wort from your boil kettle. So when you're done with your boil, you transfer it out through this tubing, and then you hook up a cold water source that runs the opposite way. And so it rapidly chills it, from whatever you're at, 180 or 200 degrees down to 60 or 70 degrees within 15, 20 minutes. That drops out a lot of the protein break. Just makes the process a lot easier. Okay, let's take a brief look at the back wall here. We've got storage for the silicone hoses with the stainless steel quick disconnects. There's a closer look there. These are used for transferring water and wort between all of the kettles. We've got a stainless steel stirring paddle here for mixing up the mash and the grain. We've got various measuring cups up above. These are all the books that I read to prep for brewing. Highly recommend all of them. Down here, we've got various chemicals. In brewing, I always start with reverse osmosis water, and then I add individual salts to complement each beer style. If you haven't learned how to adjust your water, I highly recommend doing so. It will definitely get you to a next level beer. Various other things up here, some fittings. I've got the tilt, which you drop into the fermenter to continuously measure your gravity during fermentation. Connects to an app. That thing comes in very helpful. Baking soda, salt, a couple of flasks and other measuring devices. Up top, towels. That's a must. Other cleaning compounds, PBW, Star San, and SaniClean. Those are a must for any brewery. Over here, we have a magnetic stirring plate with a flask. This is where I make yeast starters. I use the proper starter wort, which is basically a sugar mixture. And then I calculate the amount of yeast I'm going to need in order to complete fermentation. There's a lot of online calculators that make this really easy. This is my grain mill on top of a 6-gallon bucket. Got to have a lot of buckets for brewing. You just attach a drill to this, and you can get a consistent crush. It's got 2 stainless steel grinders there that can be set to pretty specific gap lengths depending on your needs. I always start with fresh grain, and then I mill that at the beginning of a brew day. I've got a couple of tubs down here. I use these when I take apart the brewery equipment to soak it and clean it. Okay, let's talk about the 2 items over here in the corner. Right here we have the SS Brewtech Unitank. It's a 14-gallon stainless steel fermenter, a conical fermenter. It's got all fully welded tri-clamp fittings. I mean, this thing it's a top-notch fermenter. This company, SS Brewtech, makes gear specifically for home brewers as well as professional level. And I've added a couple of upgrades to this as well. Just to show you briefly, the coil here. So this sits down into the wort, recirculates glycol to keep it at a constant temperature. Whenever you rise above the temperature, the controller here kicks on the pump and recirculates the glycol until it gets back down. So it's really been phenomenal for doing beer styles such as lagers that require a lower fermentation temperature, lower than the ambient air. It's great for cold crashing after fermentation is complete. That really helps drop the yeast and other proteins out of solution prior to transferring it to your kegs. So I can't say enough great things about this. Very easy to take apart, very easy to clean as well. It also comes with a caster set that's an optional add-on, so you can roll this thing around, get it over to the brew kettle for beer transfer, for cleaning, etc. So move this out of the way. And then back here we have the SS Brewtech Glycol Chiller. Essentially what it is just a big cooler with a compressor. You fill it with a proportion of glycol and water, and essentially it keeps it at a constant temperature. I usually keep it around 30 degrees. And again, it recirculates the glycol water mixture into the fermenter for temperature control. I also use it to constantly recirculate glycol in conjunction with my beer lines all the way to the tap to keep a constant temperature there as well. You've got your CO2 tank down here. I typically use 15-gallon tanks. That's connected to a high pressure fitting that comes up here, the black tube, all the way up to your main regulator. That then comes down to a manifold that splits off the CO2 into a couple different lines. One of them supplies 4 secondary regulators here on one side of the kegerator, and there's another 4 on the other side. So I can individually control the CO2 to each keg, essentially. And then there's an additional one that comes up to this secondary regulator in this coiled gas line that I'll use to connect to the fermenter and, to push out liquid from the kegs and so forth. So it's worked pretty well. I've had a couple issues with random leaks that have been hard to isolate. That's the only problem with doing something like this. Here is a chest freezer converted to a kegerator, otherwise known as a keezer. It's a pretty common home brewer upgrade. So we'll take a look here. We've got a custom wood collar here, and I actually want to give a shout out to one of my hospitalist partners, Scott Osteen, for helping me build and design this. His hobby is woodworking on the side, so this turned out great. I can store, 6 or 7 5-gallon corny kegs in here. And then back here is an Inkbird temperature controller. It essentially plugs into the chest freezer. There's a temperature probe that runs inside of the freezer, and you can set your temperature and it'll kick it on and off to keep it near your set temp. I usually keep it around 40, 41 degrees, which in the bottom of the chest freezer, it's a little bit cooler. And finally, in this corner of the brewery, I've got a wood table with 4 stools. I actually had this custom made on Etsy to fit this space. It's great to have a table in here just to sit down and relax while you're waiting on different brewing processes. I also print out my brewery recipes and spreadsheets, and I'll take notes here as well. It also just makes it feel a little bit more like a man cave in here, a little bit more room to kind of spread out and relax. We've got a window here that opens up into the main part of the basement where the taps are, so that was kind of a last minute touch. It makes it feel a little bit less enclosed in here. So I think with that, that concludes the brewery tour. I appreciate you tuning in. I welcome any feedback or comments. And again, I'm definitely going to be making some more videos in the brewery, such as a kind of start to finish brew day. I'll do a yeast starter video. If there's anything else that people out in the home brewing community want to see, I'm definitely open to feedback. Again, thank you for watching, and please subscribe.
Guys, thank you very much for watching that. Basically, John let me use this video on my channel. Never even questioned it. He just said, yeah, go ahead, make sure you let people see what I've got and what we can do and what we can do for the brewing community. So I really appreciate you watching that whole video all the way to the end. What a setup, eh? All electric, 3-tier system. Nothing like what we've got in this little shed here. This is my little shed that I've been building for 4 years now, and I've been learning how to brew for 4 years. I'm really, really happy to see these kind of things come through. All right, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for being part of this channel. Thank you to the patrons for looking after this channel. Like always, they are here to help me brew and show you what I do. I have some videos coming up soon. I've got an all grain coming up this week, and a couple of extracts as well. So cheers, guys. Thanks for watching.